Through until lunch now with this panel discussion. We're going to talk about the digital transformation of the maritime sector. We're going to hear about some of the experiences, challenges and opportunities faced by industry stakeholders with some different perspectives on the issue, from the technology supply side, from ship managers and from the ports with which our seagoing vessels interact. Just to explain a little bit about where my own organisation is involved in the industry, we run a membership group called the Smart Maritime Council. It consists of a range of diverse maritime stakeholders that hold regular meetings to determine how we could better collaborate in improving the digital capabilities of the sector. We're looking at ways where members can align on standards and on data formats to allow information to flow more easily across the shipping ecosystem and to increase the efficiency of the supply chain, really, for everyone's mutual benefit in the group and across the industry at large. I have the privilege of being the chairman of the council, so my job is to just try and get these guys to talk politely to each other as much as possible. You'll see on the slide here, it's a nice mix of representatives from across the industry. We have vessel owners and managers, technology providers, finance, legal and insurance companies and class societies. Some of the members are joining me on the panel here for this discussion, and we also have some other members who are contributing in the afternoon panel as well. So it's a group with a wide range of perspectives, and I think we really need that combination of different viewpoints to make significant progress in digitalising this industry. To date, we've worked on a few interesting projects trying to improve access to digital data in shipboard operations. We've worked on creating a standardised noon report data format built on ISO standards, with work coming out of the Japanese maritime cluster. We've been discussing data ownership and access best practices for the data coming from shipboard equipment to get some agreement between equipment manufacturers and vessel operators. And we're working on discussions as well to support wider use of digital documentation to replace paper during port calls. Ultimately, from talking to these different companies, we find that progressive organisations like our members and others that are joining here today and joining online that are interested in these topics already recognise that access to accurate and timely data is absolutely fundamental to improving the efficiency of shipping operations and to streamlining the whole supply chain. Where we improve efficiency, we're going to improve profitability while also reducing energy consumed. So there are financial and decarbonisation incentives for increased digitalisation on both sides. From a technical standpoint, much of the type of digital integration that we talk about is relatively straightforward when it comes to things like standardisation. But shipping often doesn't like to do things in a very easy way. Agreement on open data standards to allow for widespread sharing of operational data. It would really revolutionise the maritime sector, but company politics often gets in the way and produces a bit of a roadblock. And that can be more difficult to deal with than the technological challenges, just to get people to talk together and agree on a common approach to data in certain circumstances. Nevertheless, progress is definitely being made. There is enthusiasm for some of the things that we're talking about, for this idea of collaborating and working towards standardisation. And there are some major companies that are taking a lead role in pushing this forward. Some of those have joined me on the panel here today. So without any further ado, we will get on to talking to our esteemed guests here. Perhaps we'll start, guys, with a quick introduction of yourselves, your companies and your role in your organisations. So to kick us off, Peter Schallenberger, please.
Yeah, with pleasure. Good morning, everybody. Peter Schellenberger, probably the only tourist from Singapore here at the moment. It was a bit difficult to travel here, but it was fun. I work for the TOM Group. I'm the Vice President Supply Chain and the Managing Director of Vanier Marine, which is our accelerator company that was just founded to find like-minded people to go on a journey of e-commerce and e-catalogs around our vessels and look into catering and related services. So we have been involved in the Smart Maritime Network for quite some time and are quite excited to use this standardization as an enabler, particularly also for startup companies to contribute with services and ideas once that certain standards are established. We are aware that we are still working in a dinosaur industry, and we are quite determined to slowly change that.
Peter, thank you. Beatrice, over to you.
Good morning. So my name is Beatrice Moore. I'm the Group Head of IT Strategy and Architecture for ABP Port, Associated British Ports. The port group operates 21 of the ports in the UK, so it's quite large, and we handled around about a quarter of the UK seaborne trade. Experience, I've only joined the organization for about a year, so I'm fairly new into the maritime industry. However, I do have experience in logistics, like I work for Royal Mail, manufacturing, other companies such as semiconductors, where we use quite a lot of standards for data transfer. In terms of the organization, the role is very much focused on helping the organization move into the digitalized world, and particularly focusing on how we can use digitalization to really improve the connectivity and the services to our customers and the operations within the ports.
Thank you, Beatrice. Ronald.
Yeah, I'm Ronald Spithout. I'm fairly new in the industry, doing this only for 20 years, but the last 5 years trying to drive digitalization at sea by means of satellite communication and digital technologies for Inmarsat. And within Inmarsat, I'm responsible for the maritime business.
Thank you, Ronald. And last but not least, Himanshu.
Morning all, thank you for joining us on a Tuesday morning. And my name is Himanshu Chopra. I'm the Managing Director of the Anglo-Eastern London office. Anglo-Eastern is a third-party ship manager. We provide full technical ship management to about 660 ships and another crew management for another 220 ships. We also do technical services for new build projects. We've overseen about 420 of those as well. Company is headquartered in Hong Kong, and then we've got offices all over. London, we opened up the office early December last year, and I'm quite excited to be here with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Himanshu. I have some questions I prepared and had a preparatory call with the panel about a week ago where we talked about some of the issues that we wanted to cover. But please get your questions into Slido. I'll be able to check them myself on here and put them to the panel on your behalf over the course of the discussion, so please feel free to do that. But starting off, Himanshu, I might start with you. What within Anglo-Eastern, I mean, as a major ship manager, what is the current state of digitalization within your company, and what are the drivers for Anglo-Eastern in terms of improving your use of digital systems, and maybe how has that changed over the last 5-10 years and become maybe more important?
Thanks, Rob. At Anglo-Eastern, like most shipping or ship management companies, we did have applications. We had applications for crewing, we had an application for quality, health and safety, we had an application for operations department, but they were all disconnected and siloed. They didn't talk to each other. If I had to see something from the PMS and if I had to see who the second engineer is, I would have had to open the crewing module. So we've developed an ERP platform, which now, under the umbrella of which we've got all the modules within it. And it just ensures like seamless accessibility of information. So that's what we do with the ERP system. In addition to that, for navigation and voyage performance, we've partnered with Wärtsilä. So Wärtsilä Fleet Operation Solution, I think we were one of the first to partner with them. And there are companies who would like to develop by themselves, but we felt that partnering with the best in class made a lot of sense. And we've been over the past few years, we've been able to tailor the application to our needs as well. So it's working quite well for us. And the third is, of course, we also have the accounting suite. So 3 verticals, basically the ship management ERP, the navigation and voyage performance, and the accounting. Now, we appreciate the fact that, in a ship owner's office, the chartering desk might want to see some information which will be different from a technical desk or an operation desk. So at the front end, what we have is a client portal, and it's basically a dashboard where you can customize the widgets and the information that you wish to derive out of these 3 systems or verticals that we have below them. So it's been working. We've seen a lot of success and a lot of appreciation, so it's working quite well.
You mentioned going from siloed data sources to an overall ERP. How did you go about integrating the different technologies? Was that something you had to start from scratch, or were you able to take what you already had and find ways of linking them together and allowing data to flow more easily?
There was some data that we wanted and some which we couldn't migrate as well. For example, PMS, Plan Maintenance System. We had like 3 different systems working on 3 different platforms. Luckily, we didn't have like a lot, but 3. And we were not able to migrate the entire data onto the new system. Besides, I don't think we wanted to do that either, because for a lot, we didn't have master data management, so to speak. And we had to develop that such that if a part was being ordered, it had the same part number across all the vessels and all the vessel managers who were working in on the office side. So to answer your query, Rob, I don't think there was a lot that we wanted to migrate as well. So we've now developed it as per the latest standards and future-proofing it as well for the future. So we're quite happy with the results that we're seeing. And of course, the legacy data is still available if somebody needs to fall back over it.
So essentially, you had to start from scratch almost. You built a new system for a purpose and then moved from there.
The initial framework was there, but then there was a lot of time and effort and resources that went into developing it further.
Thank you. Peter, I mean, as a fellowship manager, does much of that sound familiar? I mean, what have your experiences been over the last 5 to 10 years of bringing in digital systems and data analysis collection systems?
Well, of course, we have similar experiences and a little bit different ways how to deal with it. In principle, we have just gone through a long project in choosing a new PMS system with all accessories. And we have thoroughly analyzed 12 systems initially and came down to 3 last ones. Basically, the takeaway is that none of the PMS systems as they are bring all the functionalities that we want. And because we want to have a lot of integrations in order to be finally enabled to plan better, which is one of the biggest challenges that shipping and ship management has. So basically the takeaway was that we have chosen a system that has the most modern database structure, so recently developed, so that it enables us to integrate whatever we feel is not perfect from the system itself. They didn't like it very much, but it is what it is. And we integrate 21 applications into that PMS system, and that starts with, of course, a crewing platform. That starts with an agency module. It starts, very important, with logistic information, because we have to bring together the information that needs to be available for the guys on the vessel. That's something that is now only sinking in, that we have to, in many ways, include the vessels into so many things. You look at logistics, for example, is the biggest enemy in terms of cost for the superintendent. He really is not able to budget how much logistics, particularly in these times, will cost him. So only if we start combining things and we know exactly where things are, then we can save a lot of time, also in administration. To give you an example, a normal logistic delivery to a vessel from A to Z until it's landed can have to 10, 15 A4 pages of communication between vessel, purchaser, and logistic provider. That's absolute madness. So when we talk about low-hanging fruits, here it is. So if we manage to integrate forward-looking logistic platforms into our systems, then we can basically create visibility for the vessel. He knows, the chief knows exactly, okay, my spare part, where is it? He can track the spare part. He can give an instruction where to deliver from a hub. He can combine barges, which is also a huge cost factor. We can see what is going to the vessel at a port call, or in which port is it best to deliver. So you can only do this with a fair set of data that you have, and your optimization potential is huge. To give you an example, we have established, we call it spare part highways from China, Korea, Japan to our hubs in Rotterdam and Singapore for weekly air freight consoles. If we use those, we save between 30 and 40% of cost. That's huge if you look at it across 230 vessels. So there's a lot of optimization potential, and the key is that we have to keep the systems so flexible that we can do the integrations largely ourselves via modern APIs. And we just have to make sure that we negotiate lump sum integration cost. That is the biggest risk that we have when we want something special. That's how they kill us. With that, we're moving forward in a future-driven way, I think. I'm quite excited about it, actually.
Thank you, Peter. You mentioned the supply chain as a whole and being able to have information about what's happening. Maybe on the port side, Beatrice, I mean, the ports are an integral part of that and being able to exchange information with ship management companies, shipping companies and the rest of the supply chain. How have you seen digitalization in the port sector in the UK evolving over the last 5 to 10 years? I mean, it's been taken very seriously, I presume, in terms of availability of data.
It has because for two main reasons. One, because we want to make sure that we offer a greater range of services and better services to our customers. And the customers are actually demanding a lot of information around the shipping. Where are things along the shipping route? And also to help them optimize their supply chain, which is going in parallel with the efforts we are doing for optimizing our own operations internally on the port. So we see, particularly, as my colleagues were saying, the investment in mechanisms and formats to exchange data with other partners as a critical aspect for us. We are currently embarking in a large program of work to actually improve how we not only manage the data internally to help us optimize our activities, but also how we enable that information to be available to the supply chain. So that's one area where we are really heavily investing. The other area is, in order for us to get that data, let's just say in some ports, because we operate 21 ports of different levels, some of the ports are not as advanced as others. So we are modernizing some of the technology internally to actually help us capture the data and then be able to share that data. So for example, in the same manner that Peter and Himanshu were talking about, we are investing in a PMIS solution. It's a tender that we have got currently open up in the market. We are rolling out terminal operating systems to actually make sure we move away in some areas from spreadsheets. We are also taking other investments in digitalization and innovation to look at things into safety. We take safety is number one priority for ABP. So what we are also using is trialing things like wearable devices and introducing technology for other areas that is not just for profit, but also for the safety and security of our people in the port.
Thank you, Beatrice. Ronald, come to you. I mean, what the guys have been speaking about here in terms of how the use of data has evolved over the last decade or so. I mean, the supporting systems that you guys at Inmarsat are providing for the communications backbone to do some of this stuff at sea, I mean, that's evolved so quickly over the last, particularly 5 years. I mean, I remember being in this building about 15, 16 odd years ago for the launch of the fleet broadband satellites. And to compare that to now, the acceleration in terms of bandwidth availability and the amount of data being consumed is extraordinary. Do you tell us maybe a bit about your experiences over the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, it is indeed, as you say, it's accelerating every year, exponentially almost. So if you look back what we tried to do over the last 5, 6 years, actually it's a little bit longer because we had a long planning as we normally do. It takes a while before we announce things and have things out in the space. But if you look at this, the question of data standardization and the likes, our take on it from a digital communication platform perspective is that people like stability. You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time a new application comes out or every time a new requirement comes out or a regulation comes out. So the portion that we played from our perspective is develop a platform that can live and grow with the demands of the changing data sets. And that is what we try to do with our digital platform. So we never launched a VSAT, we launched a digital platform, and that is growing with the demands. And a couple of key design criteria there that we took 5, 6 years ago are, on one hand, the ability to talk with the network. So application providers or application developers have the hooks, bells and whistles to talk into our network with APIs. And the other thing is to separate traffic based on the needs that you have on board a vessel. So it is either the business community, where you are integrating 27 application sets, the business community, the crew community, and we have a third one, which we call the IoT part of the network, the measuring, and having a platform that you can talk to and is just doing that, that was key on one end. And it shows because we see data volumes that we never saw before. And every year we look back and say, wow, what is happening there? So on that side, you wouldn't be surprised to hear that we have 7 satellites still coming in the next 2.5 years. And each of them are as powerful as the whole constellation together. That just to stay with you on that growth, right? So that is coming, but what more we tried for the last 5 years and proven successful in combating all the wild growing reinvention of the wheel every time is the network of networks. You saw probably over the summer our announcement on Orchestra, where we said with 5G as a protocol where applications are actually recognizing what is underneath and how it reacts underneath on a network level, right? We are taking the next steps. So our current platform is using L-band and Ka-band, and what we are trialing currently is to make the vessel a node in a mesh network. Similar like what your Wi-Fi router is doing at home, because it's repeating signals for anyone else. And there where you need applications to have either extremely low latency or very high throughput, they will pick those signals from other vessels in a meshed, dynamic mesh network. So 5G terrestrial rollout is the first stage of that. Same platform, I'm still talking same platform, right? It's just evolving in that way, that we are adding those terrestrial technologies there where it's very busy, in front of your ports, for instance, or in case of airports when we are talking aviation, and then adding the satellites that are coming, adding the poles, adding low orbit satellites just where we need them. We are not going to launch 10,000 satellites for consumers, but just targeted there where our mission critical mobile users need them. We are adding those, and all of that, we call that the network of networks, still talking about the same platform, because once you have it on your vessel, you don't want to change it every 2-3 years, right? Because that vessel is with you for 20 years probably, and so are our satellites. So that's what I mean with designing a platform for digitalization. And I think, in my guess, we are on a third of the journey only, not more than that. But it is proving very exciting, and so far it goes very well.
Thank you. I'm interested, actually, Himanshu and Peter, just to, based on what Ronald said, I mean, it's kind of a chicken and egg idea here of is the extra capabilities that satellite providers are making available, is that giving you new ideas of what you can do on the digital side, or is it the other way that you have things that you want to do, and as the capability comes available, it finally allows you to do the things that you've previously always wanted to do? Himanshu, maybe?
See, just to, with bearing what Ronald has said, connectivity certainly is like hugely important, right? I mean, with all that people are already doing, we're talking about data being exchanged with the shore, and it's a large amount of data for it to be successful, and for us to move along this digital journey. And you're looking at, in terms of cost, if you talk about, it's $1,500–1,600 for a 2 Mbps connection on board a ship even now. Whereas for a 4 Gbps connection ashore, you're paying probably less than $100. So obviously there's a huge disparity there. I think with the coming of this orchestra, it will certainly enable more seamless exchange of all of this data, and then you can think about what else you wish to do. But right now you've got to work with the capability that you have, to be quite honest. So,
Ronald, you want to respond?
2 days ago, I was sitting on the couch with my daughter. I have a 70-year-old daughter, and she says, at home, she says the internet connectivity is absolutely, well, it's not good. She used other words for it, right? But so I took my phone and I did a speed check, and we only had 100 megabits per second, right? Yeah. But to her standards, it was not good, because they are doing new things every day, and so my guess is that you will always want more, right? Regardless what comes out, even on shore, but especially on a vessel where actually we are still playing a lot of catch up with what happens on the shore.
Yeah, so the demand is already there based on people's experiences working with short
that's
systems.
my point. Yeah.
Peter, that be similar for you? I mean, does it change your approach to this if more data is available at cheaper?
Yeah,
and faster
it is.
speed?
A ship manager's challenge is, for example, we have 17 owners that we serve, and everybody has different previous equipment and different propensity to spend money, which is always the critical part here. So as a ship manager, we have to enforce for the future certain minimum standards. So for example, we're now upgrading on all vessels to proper service. And there is investment necessary, but if you want to start securing the vessel also in terms of cybersecurity, which we talk about later, that's absolutely necessary. And look back 2 or 3 years ago, I think we only had 70% VSAT coverage. Now we have 95%. So that means it is becoming an absolute standard, not only because of the crew crisis and because we have to give free internet to everybody on board. It's mostly for operational reasons, really.
You have to give crew internet just for their mental well-being
Yes.
to start with, right? Which eventually equals errors and damage. So no doubt. But you also like to keep them out of your business network.
Totally.
Because only for cybersecurity reasons, I would say.
Yeah, I want to come back to those crew and cyber elements a bit later. Beatrice, might come in here with you next after the guys have been chatting there for a minute. One thing I'm always interested to learn about is failures in implementing new technologies and some of the real difficulties people go through, because it is one of the best ways to learn is by failing. And is there anything that you could maybe share with us in terms of things that have been very difficult or have gone wrong in terms of trying to improve this access to data, this streamlined efficiency that we've spoken about kind of in the first 10 minutes or so here?
Yes, sure. Before the new management team was in place in ABP a few years ago, there was a program of work that tried, as I mentioned before, we ran 21 ports, and we had some, let's just say, old technology. So there was a transformation program that tried to do a big bang and tried to solve multiple projects, multiple problems with one large transformation program, and trying to simplify a lot of technologies into one, consolidate everything into one, and move all the data into one system. Let's just say that approach did not work. So what we have found after some of the failures of that project is that being much more modular, targeted with the investment, and targeted with how and what areas of the data you really focus on has really proven the best solution for us. And the second thing that we have moved into the way of operating is really start doing trials and proof of concept. So we are running quite a lot of proof of concepts. For example, everybody will be familiar with the 5G trial that we are running in Southampton, the first one that has been launched in terms of UK ports. And we're also running IoT trials. All of that is just focused on getting data, getting information to enable us to actually improve our operations and improve our services. So small trials and really targeted use cases would be my approach, my recommended approach versus what's happening in the past.
Don't do too much too soon.
Correct.
Be prioritized and do small things
It's
correctly.
also because we need to be mindful of the level and the level of adoption of some of these technologies at the ports. Some of these ports are not used to dealing with digital devices or with digitalization and innovation. So that is another challenge that we have. So if we try to do too much too soon, the people on our ports and our customers might not be able to follow the journey. So we just need to be careful. The pace is accelerating, don't get me wrong, but we need to be mindful of that level of adoption.
Thank you, Beatrice. Peter, Himanshu, any failures that you'd like to talk about or struggles that you had in terms of things that you've learned lessons from?
Yeah, sure. I was actually going to come to that. More than successes and failures, it's more like the challenges, right? So I think when you try and do anything related to digitalization or any change within the organization, especially if you talk about a digital transformation, business transformation, digitalization, the initial impression of people within the organization is, oh, it's an IT project. So people need to realize and appreciate the fact that any digital journey that you're taking is not an IT project, it's a business project. Aside from that, human beings are generally like quite averse to change. So now suddenly, if you're asked, you were doing something and now you're asked to do a data entry or anything else in a different manner, it's never going to be welcome. And it's likely that it could even be viewed as an added admin burden. Whereas the idea is for to reduce admin burden in the long run. So I think for this, training is key as well. And then you've got the management and people in the senior management who are there in any company, and they all loved or had a particular favorite system of theirs. So again, here is a new system that you're trying to roll out, and what people need to realize is that you will fail, right? I mean, you might get it 60% right, 80% right when you do it first time, and then for that 20%, you might have to go back on the drawing board to try and get it right. So I think in the end, what organization and people need to be more tolerant. Otherwise, people who are at the helm of this digitalization journey are often find themselves dealing more with people's egos as opposed to improving the processes. And these are the internal challenges. And externally, I would say, let's take EGDIS for an example. When EGDIS came out, every single ship a navigator went to, he was probably seeing the exact same data being displayed in a different manner. And although it was a tool to enhance situational awareness, it would have been a lot better if while we decided to roll out EGDISes, the manner in which the data was to be displayed could have been decided as well. Similarly, data overload, right? I mean, in the end, whether it's a navigator, whether it's an engineer, he needs to be looking at news that he can use, data that he can use. If you're just going to put like every single thing that's being pulled out on a screen, it's going to probably distract him with what he should be looking at, or what is most important to him. And then alarm fatigue as well, right? I mean, when the EGDISes also came, and even now, for every smallest of things, you get an alarm on the bridge. And in the end, what happens is that if everything is important to a navigator, then nothing is important. So we have to be mindful about where an alarm is being raised and whether it's actually meant to draw the attention of the navigator or the engineer, or have we just gone bananas with this digitalization journey where there's an alarm happening for everything. So that's what I'd like to share.
Interesting. It sounds like it kind of lines up with what Beatrice said about the don't have too much. We'll do smaller targeted things and do it properly, and you get more benefit that way. Peter?
Yeah, probably may share two small stories. The first one is 3 or 4 years ago, where I tried to set up a service that goes over and beyond the point-to-point security for cybersecurity. Also in the knowledge that 70% of all cybersecurity issues are humanly induced, mostly on the vessel, knowingly or unknowingly. And it was quite interesting. We tried to present a service with pen tests and everything that covered the whole area. And we found out that 3 or 4 years ago, the industry or the owners were not ready to fork any money out for this kind of service, even knowing that if you get hit, you may be hit with several $1 million. That is still something that until today I do not understand. It's slowly changing. We're no longer in this activity, but I saw it at the time as absolutely the right idea, but it was just too early. There's now more and more cases where people were hit and people are a little bit scared, but still, until today, most owners wouldn't be willing to fork out $100 a month per vessel to be protected. A lot of them would knowingly go into risk to face problems. So that is still a big surprise for me, and I hope it will change. The second thing was also about the difficulties to bring modern elements into supply chain. So we are part of a 3D printing project for spare parts with Wilhelmsen. It's quite interesting. We are concentrating on parts that are no longer available or have long lead times and so on. So we thought it was quite sexy to deliver such a spare part to a vessel with a drone, because then you would have all the new technologies together. I'm now talking Singapore. And we tried for about 6 months to get a PR stunt flight with a printed 3D part onto a vessel, and we failed all the time because of the most minor things. It could be rain, it could be restrictions of flight space because of National Day, it could be sudden change of vessel berthing position, just 100 meters too far away for the drone. So what I'm trying to say, I love all the ideas and we look at all of them, but if you look at introducing this into a regular part of your supply chain, it's all not so easy. The devil is really in the detail, and we learn to live by our good old Plan B rule. If we don't have Plan B, then we're royally in the mud.
Thank you, Peter. You've spoken all about kind of the digitalization in your own operations. I'd be interested to move then on to the idea of exchanging data with other stakeholders, with your suppliers, with ports and shipping companies supplying, exchanging data. All of these different places across the supply chain where it can improve your ability to do business if you're able to exchange data more easily with other stakeholders. I'll come to this, I'll finish this question and then maybe we'll get to some of the ones coming in on the Slido here. But would anyone like to get in there about how some of the struggles that you have in exchanging data with other stakeholders in the supply chain, what you would like to be able to do maybe that you're not able to do at present? Any volunteers before I pick someone?
Sure.
Go on, you.
iPad on my study. So, exchanging of data, I want to first get to the basics, like let's talk about the noon report that goes from a master's desk. And there is a format for the managers, there's a format for the owners, there's a format for charterers, sub-charterers, everyone's got his own format. In the end, you're sending the exact same information in different formats. So it might be worthy of, again, just coming out of the standardized reporting form, which is uniform to everyone, because the fact is, there's not a single party that is saying, okay, fine, I'll just take your form and use it, and I'm going to let go of my form, thereby reducing the admin burden on the master or the second officer, or whoever's preparing this. And it's the same thing with any such report that's happening. There is just so much of duplication of reports. Similarly, it is my dream to see ships entering ports, getting the port clearance without like printing heaps of paper. 10 copies of crew list, 3 copies of stores list. And it has not changed from the time that I was a third mate doing this, or now, even when you see on board ships. So if we are to embark on this journey, I think the collaboration or controlled collaboration is certainly needed, because maritime innovation cannot be siloed. I mean, I cannot have like cool ERP solutions and navigation solutions, and in the end, all that my third mate is still doing is like, he's got like 50, 70 pages of port papers that he's printed out because he's entering into, he needs this for various parties, So I think let's sometimes look at the basic stuff that's been going on for years, and if that can be changed across the industry. And I know you were looking for a more cooler answer, so I'm going to come to that now. Basically, in terms of collaboration, yes, I told you that we partnered with Vatsala Fleet Operation Solutions. So they have a suite called the Port Navi Planner. And around June end, we had a Hapag-Lloyd container vessel, which we manage out of our sister office in Hamburg. This container vessel called the Tangier port in Morocco, just in time. So basically, there was no waiting. She was able to adjust her speed, thereby reducing energy and fuel as well, and reaching just in time without any waiting at all into the Tangier port. And I think this is a pretty low-hanging fruit where ports can communicate with each other, ports can communicate with ships, and in effect, you're not having much traffic at the bottleneck or the entrances of such ports as well, and you'll end up making navigation a lot more safer as well.
So you've seen the potential benefits of that exchange of information, of that kind of standardization where it's done. Beatrice, there's a question there about data sharing between ship operators and port operators. It's kind of the same question, this idea of being able to exchange data. I mean, how is that helping ports? I mean, to be able to better exchange data with people like Peter and Himanshu and their ships. I mean, how does that change the way that you operate?
Yeah, it's a journey that we are on, and for us, we really aspire to have much greater sharing of information with everybody else that is coming to our ports, for 2 reasons. One, as it was already mentioned, it not only helps with decarbonization, as we can start doing just-in-time arrival of vessels, but it actually allows us to have a much greater flexibility around how we manage the transit of that ship cargo through our ports and outbound into the rail or the hauliers. So we are looking at the entire transit and at the entire experience through the ports. By understanding from a vessel, from the agents, at a much faster and timely location of the data when the data is received. At the moment, we are really suffering from information not being given to us on time, so we cannot plan effectively whether our pilots need to be on board, what services we need to provide, like tagging or mooring. And then we cannot really establish what is the most optimal, or how can we best employ our land crew and our cranes, etc., to actually offload the cargo or load the cargo into our ships. So it really, really will help us streamline and make it more effective, reducing not only the time of the vessels on the port, the queues of lorries that sometimes we have waiting for the cargo because the vessels have been delayed for several hours and we didn't know. So you can see how the cascade is not only for operational efficiency, but it's also creating or delivering better services to our customers and reducing the pollution at our ports, which is one of our largest agenda items at the moment. Increase that sustainability and reducing, decarbonizing our ports.
And are you aligning with other international ports in terms of the approaches that you're following with shipping companies to try and exchange data? Because obviously from the shipping company's point of view, if they have a different platform or a different system to follow for every port that they're visiting, then there's no benefit from their point of view. It's good for you, but it becomes something that they have to then change for every single port.
Yes.
Is there any alignment there internationally?
We definitely would like to do more in that sense, and we welcome any type of standards because it also reduces our time for integration and the cost of integration. So we would be much better prepared to actually accept a new customer, get a new customer onboarding, and actually start generating that traffic and cargo in a much more effective manner. At the moment, sometimes it's quite painful, to be entirely honest, and costly for us also, having to do point solutions and customized solutions to exchange information. But not only that, it's also some of our customers are still very much operating on spreadsheets, let alone in any digital manner. So it would be great to see that digitalization moving at a faster rate.
Thank you. Peter, anything you'd sorry,
I can relate to
I'll
that.
come back to you, Brian.
We have 142 regular ports, we have 47 frequent ports and 15 key ports. So you're working and living in a civilized space, you know, but when you go to some places where we need to go with 80% tramping vessels, that is where really we're dealing with facts-based information, basically. Yeah? So, and there's a couple of questions here. How do we mitigate that, and how can we involve commercial parties in the value chain? And I guess that's something that's changing in ship management. If you want to maintain relevance as a ship manager, there's a couple of really important things happening right now. First of all, we have to start being completely performance driven and making performance transparent. So not just operate vessels, because otherwise we slide down to a situation where we're just administrators of ship certificates, and that would be very scary. And a lot of ship managers will eventually go down that way. Because it is also quite obvious in the discussions of the last 2 days that the next priority that we have is to look into all matters that are relating to ESG and what we call cradle-to-grave problems. We are expected as ship managers to be consultant for our clients and to help them make the right decisions because we operate ships, we know how they work. So commercially we seem to be out of it, but if we want to have our reason for existence, we have to be competent in that area, and because it changes everything, the whole way how to look at things. And to give an example how we can involve commercial elements or charterers, and this is exactly that, where we set up with our agents in those remote ports some warning systems as to what the waiting times are and so on, and this information is not readily available, and there's no coordinating factor for this, so based on that, We can, of course, suggest to the charterers with our routing systems that are also integrated the safest route, the fastest route, or most economical viable route for them to choose. Yeah. So we will not make the choices, but we will provide solutions to choose from. That is our job.
Ron, do you want to get in there?
Yeah, well, I'd like to add to that. Of course, standardization is driven by the market, and you see that once you have the big stakeholders in the supply chain driving this, then you see standardization picking up rapidly. Ports are one, finances are others, charterers are the third one. So you saw that happening when actually the targets on sustainability and emissions were set for 2050, and then suddenly you see within a year or two you see all these things entering the economical arena of a ship manager, right? Because banks start to drive on ESG investments, right? Charters will influence the day rates when vessels are greener. Ports, as I just heard, they need information about how green a vessel is, and they will treat that differently eventually. So my guess is that if we don't need a lot of them, if we are able to set one or two of other type of large, big, hairy targets for 2050 as an industry, that will drive standardization tremendously. And my guess is it's safety. If we are capable, in a similar way as we say, well, a vessel needs to comply to these emission standards or this type of fuel in 2050, if we could articulate a safety standard for 2050 that vessels should not only apply to, but be able to show publicly, right, to monitor and report on it, then you will see the similar stakeholders having an economical interest in it. And it's my vast belief that shipping is still behind what happens on land. So the technology is there, right? And the moment you set those standards, the incremental costs that you need to deal with the new demands are not that big anymore. So the same technology that you can use for business application, you could use for additional safety and situational awareness. Automated safety, that you don't want 25,000 alarms, you just want to have the right ones being picked up and flagged there where it's needed. So automated safety, making sure that safety is being picked up, including the well-being of the crew, right, in an automated way. I think setting a few big hairy goals for that will drive standardization big time over the industry. And you don't want regulators to set the standards, because that will take far too long. We see that everywhere, right? You need the economics do their work. So set a couple of standards, right, and let the big stakeholders put their demands in, and eventually it will standardize, and it won't take years. Because yesterday I heard, I think it was Nick, was it you yesterday, who said, well, how long would it take for new things to kick in? And we looked back, and that the first innovations on communication, it took years, right, to reach 50 million people. And you had the example of, what was it, Pokemon, right? That took only 19 days to reach 50 million people after its invention. So, and that is just because the economics work. And that's what I would like to bring in. Don't wait for regulators to set standards, right? But let the industry set a couple of hairy goals. And my guess is that automated safety in all aspects and well-being should be the next one.
The Digital Container Shipping Association are giving a good example of that at the moment, because with containers, obviously it's one of the most digitalized types of shipping, and they've come together to do that, leave the regulators aside and make their own standards.
The reason I picked that one is just, if you look at the examples of accidents over the last 5 years, right? And we all know that most of them are man-made, right? And most of them are because crew is getting tired or depressed or whatever, right? So if you see per year how much is claimed and paid out and paid as premium, right? And that all can be diminished magnificently if you invest in a safety target together. Because then the technology will be utilized. What we currently see as safety is a standard that was invented 35 years ago, and it's still exactly the same. So I think we should take the next step and use all the technology that is used on shore to enhance safety on board, and then standardization will be a non-item, I think.
Thank you, Ronald. Perhaps we'll have a look at some of the Slido questions here. If any of you, with the Slido questions, if you see any that you agree with, you can click the like button on there and it will jump up the list. So the most liked question is for Peter and Himanshu. I think you guys can possibly see it on the screen there as well. How do you perceive the changing landscape of digitalization, specifically for chartering and operations teams? What provisions for these technological advances have Anglo, Eastern and Tone Group taken? Sebastian Jack from Shipfix has asked. So Peter and Himanshu, changing landscape for charting and operations in terms of digitalization.
Thanks, Sebastian, for putting me in this tight corner, because neither do I work with a chartering desk nor with a operations desk. But I'll try and answer this. So I think it's pretty much like what the future that I perceive is very much like ordering an Uber, right? So basically, if you've got ships moving from ships out there in the water, and you want to position ships at a particular port, then the operations and mainly the chartering desk can do that. As far as the operations desk is concerned, they're probably judging the commercial credibility of the ship. And all of this data, if you have it like as public knowledge available, then it makes people take that decision as well. The other thing is, I'm just thinking, like if you buy an insurance today, it's an open marketplace where your top 10 insurance companies, the quotes come automatically. And then it could be similar for charterers to see the various rates, the spot rates of vessels or ship owners, and there might be some ship owners who are more expensive than others, but they could be more eco-friendly, and then that's a choice that the charterer makes, whether he wants to go with a more eco-friendly owner or the cheapest one. So to me, the way we ought to be headed is in that direction where you're not calling up 3 different people to book a flight now. You go on an aggregator site and you book a flight within 10 minutes. So that's how the chartering landscape ought to move as well.
Thank you. Peter?
Yeah, I alluded to the port information that's important for charters, but give you another example, and that comes back to safety, what you mentioned. For example, an integration of our travel module enables us, for example, when we see that there's an explosion in Istanbul airport. So with a click of a button, we could see immediately who of our 7,000 crew may possibly be at that place, and then immediately take action. So I'm just saying that is maybe one more example how we can make operations safer.
That actually links with the other questions popped to the top here with the likes, also for Peter and Himanshu. Sorry, Beatrice and Ronald. How are you using technology to address crewing issues?
So by crewing, I assume the question is more in relation to welfare and well-being, or let me try and answer in that direction. So what we know is that by 2025, 75% of our population is going to be millennials. So we've got to obviously understand what their characteristics are like. So any millennials in the house? Not me. I'm probably a baby boomer, or what you call. So millennials have a short span of attention.
Yeah.
It's a known fact that I think is less than that of a goldfish. So it's, I think 8.6 seconds, 8.7 seconds. They love gaming. They like instant feedback and appreciation. They're very app friendly. They're very blog friendly. They've grown up with internet around them, right? So when we look at all this, a start is to have unlimited connectivity for the ship staff on board, because at best we need to be pragmatic. The fact is that our seafarers, the accommodation, the quality of accommodation that we provide is at best a 2-star motel, and you're putting them on board ships in these testing circumstances without Wi-Fi. It's probably unacceptable. So Wi-Fi is a good start. Since the millennials and primarily the millennials are app friendly, I think most of us are app friendly now. We've developed an app called the Mariner app, Anglo Eastern Mariner app, And what that does is that it sort of maps out your entire life cycle of you accomplishing a contract on board a ship. So first, while you're on leave, you'll be assigned a ship. In relation to the ship, you will automatically know through the app that what are the visas that you need, what are the courses that you need to do for this type of ship. And then you automatically, liaise with your fleet person executive through the app and get that sorted. So you're pretty much in control of your joining the ship. So, eventually your flights come, you board the ship, and then you're connected to the fleet personnel executive at all times. When your relief is due, you'll automatically get your reliever's name on the app, and so it's progressing in that direction. Or if your contract is likely to be delayed, it'll come on your app as well. Then after a while he's paying off, he'll get his tickets and all of that. So it's a pretty interactive app, and it does away. Gone are the days when a poor cadet had to go up to the master and say, "Can I make a phone call because I need to speak with the fleet personnel executive?" So we moved beyond that. It makes for seamless communication between the seafarers and the people in the crewing department. The second is that with the pandemic, it's not very safe for somebody to go with a minor ailment ashore. This is what we feel. So we've invested in, or we've actually collaborated with another company for telemedicine. And with having internet on board, you can literally take videos and WhatsApp to this company ashore, and it's a team of doctors who speak various languages. They speak English, they speak Hindi, they speak Tagalog, they speak Russian. So most of the crew supply nations, or the crew that we have, they speak the languages, which makes it easy for them to reach out if they're having a mental health issue or something bothering them as well. Because, sometimes it's just okay to say that you're not okay and pick up the phone and speak with someone. So we've seen great success in terms of treating people on board without exposing them to the pandemic, which is still out at large at various ports. And of course, addressing people's mental health and well-being issues as well. Sadly, as far as crew changes are concerned, this is a challenge which we are facing like any other company. So there is no easy solution to this, to be quite honest. It's being taken up by various industry bodies, but there are a lot of nations who've just pulled the wool over their eyes to completely ignore this and their responsibility as some of the ports might even call themselves as maritime hubs, but the regulations that they have make it increasingly difficult to execute a crew change. And while we try and address it the best we can, there is very little success, sadly, that we've seen so far. So it's just about diverting ships to the nearest ports and having these difficult conversations with the ship owners to get timely reliefs done. It's generally not timely. It's going beyond time if a ship is at a particular route where there are no crew changes.
Himanshu, I think that the questions jumped to the top there. It kind of links directly to what you're talking about shipping companies, ship managers independently building their own platforms for managing and communicating with crew, and this lack of cohesion in this approach to technology of dealing with crew. I mean, are there any efforts being made by various different ship managers to align on this, work together?
I think what we very early realized was that what we do well and we do quite well is ship management. But if let's say, for example, we have to sit and invest with a startup company, and there are a lot of startup companies that have sprung up now. So with a startup company and say, let's develop a navigation software together, or let's develop a crew app together, or let's develop a telemedicine. There are companies who are already delivering this service and very successfully. Like, for example, I told you about Vatsala, or the company that we've done for telemedicine. So what I'm trying to say is, it might be sometimes wise to look outside and see who are the companies that are providing this service, and just taking one on board and then just collaborating with them, as opposed to wasting excessive time and developing your own. So I hope that answers.
Thank you, Peter.
I can only confirm that, and that enables us to look out for best-in-class service provision for all these matters. And the pandemic has changed, of course, a lot of things around us. Not only can we not use our training centers that we have developed for millions of dollars, so that means our whole training concept has to be shifted to remote. And then we come back to the millennials as well. Not only does the average millennial have 3 devices on board in average, right? But also they have a different need for training in terms of retention, as you say correctly. So, for example, when we look at the retention of a gamified training plan, it is much, much higher than the standard multiple choice things that have been known for 10, 20 years. So this is something that we have to take note, and we have to look at it. And this is also the chance for startups, because they have very cool ideas. We have one such startup here in the room where we're just running a trial on a crew app, you know, and we have other things like immersive training with VR goggles. I did that trial in Singapore. It's a Danish company, and I had a tool in my hand. I was supposed to do an LNG bunkering exercise, and it was so exciting. I will not forget that in a hurry. So that means it's changing everything going forward, and we have to take note of that, I guess.
Thanks, Peter. On the crewing issue, Ronald, do you have any maybe statistics about, in terms of the amount of bandwidth being used by crew, but also crew-related applications and crew management applications through the CAP program that you guys have? Has that changed a lot over the last few years?
It did, though. But before that, I think it would be good to highlight that we did a survey amongst the crew, and there is a report on our website that you can all download for free, which is the Seafarer of the Future, which is looking all the way to 2050, and how would crew look. We did it together with teachers a while ago, and it shows how different they will be from even today, even though today a lot of them are millennials already. So what is changing there? But with regards to the application providers, you heard Claire say in the previous panel that we like startups, and there's a reason for that. Because if you look at what Nick said this morning about the 350 million of digital services out in 5 to 10 years, well, more than half of that will be generated by the startups of today. And we like to have them in our application program, and the only thing we do, because they don't need a lot other than support, right? But what we do most of it is bring them into contact with people from the community, and then they do the rest, because we are the enablers. But in every sales team, I now have a dedicated person whose only job is to bring people together out of that ecosystem. We call it the Fleet Data Academy, and actually it only brings people together, and then the economics of what they need is doing the rest, and that has changed. So in the past we were looking for application providers, and currently we are more brokering between the users and the application providers, and more are just startups, as Peter says.
Thank you. Going back to the slide over here, I think Nick's question, we kind of dealt with that, the idea of data sharing with ships and ports. The next one down, what kinds of non-tax incentives can governments offer to encourage digital innovation in maritime? Setting up regulatory sandbox environments, for example. Anyone would like to comment on anything that governments could do, besides just give you a big lump of cash that would help to accelerate your digitalization efforts? No one wants to comment on what they want from governments.
Well, coming from Singapore, I think we are blessed. The whole maritime ecosystem is purely commercially driven, even though the crew changes don't work perfectly. But other than that, the maritime ecosystem is open for trials. And we come back to what you said. What does it need to be to create success? And it's mostly proof of concept. So proof of concepts are encouraged and government supported in a place like Singapore, and that's much appreciated. There's lots of grants and accelerators out. Pier 71 is one of them. and other really problem statement driven startup environments. So that is creating results, I have to say. It's a good environment for that. If I can just come back to one of the things you said, if we wait for the regulators, then we're dead. You didn't say that exactly, but something like that. But you also mentioned, Himanshu, telemedicine, right? So that's one of those things that keeps us busy at night in this time of crew difficulties. For example, if you look at the medical chest that we have on the ships, that I think that regulation is 15 or 20 years old. So with modern technology enabled by you, you can do so many more things, but just talking to a doctor alone is not good enough. You also need to have the tools on board. So I'm just saying that we have to grow with the enablement of communication, also these kind of things. So we have to go over and above the statutory things if we want to be dedicated crew managers.
Absolutely, absolutely. Completely agree. I mean, and this developing of what the medical chest is a minimum, right? And what you've got to go, you have to keep it agile, and you have to keep it updated. For example, you'd have to be quite ignorant if a company has not built up on its medical chest with the pandemic, for example. And we've obviously made it mandatory with 2 more extra oxygen concentrators, 10 of more the oxygen analyzers, and the extra medication as well. So I think and most companies have done that. I think it's only agile. It's only important for us to be flexible and then build up as a pandemic is unfolding to keep our people safe. So you're absolutely right. You can't be having a COVID case on board and not having the medicine to treat it. So,
And also cater for women on board, by the way.
yeah.
Yeah.
The top question here at the moment on the Slido, for each panel member, what advice would you give to SMEs across the ecosystem who are hesitant to leverage digital technologies to cross the digital divide, but do not see the immediate return on investment to invest in the systems, and they continue using legacy systems and processes? So how do you convince people of the value of investing in technology? Ronald?
The key is in sharing, right? Because he's calling it, or she is calling it, the digital divide. Most SMEs have no idea where to start because they see this as one big hairy thing, and you can start step by step. But key is you have to get yourself into the community and talk. And I mentioned that Fleet Data Academy, where we are just bringing people together, and you can pick just one topic, right, and start your digitalization. Because a lot of it has been tried and proof of concept well before the apps are part of the community, right? Speak to the people in such a setting, and just take a little one to start with.
I guess it links back to what Beatrice said earlier on, the idea of don't try and do too much. You do
Correct.
prioritize projects and do a proof of concept so you
Yes.
can prove what the return on investment is.
Yeah, and I would also add to that, particularly for small SMEs, one of the areas I would prioritize is communication with the other parties. So we are gradually growing into a world that automatic data exchange is going to be just the norm. So if you have legacy systems, fantastic, but create a layer above that you can actually exchange digitally that information with other parties, so you can at least be part of the wider ecosystem of suppliers, ports, shipping companies, although you still retain some of your legacy systems internally. And then look at where you maximize the value of upgrading. As you upgrade, really look carefully when you upgrade some of those legacy systems. Create that roadmap of how you're going to be moving to the more digital world. The other part would be also picking up the previous question on government. Yeah. Look out for government funding. We have, for example, adopted and taken advantage of some of that government funding. One of those was the 5G implementation in the Southampton port. And we keep looking at opportunities. And I would actually encourage the government to not only increase some of that funding, but make it more publicly known and available. At the moment, that's one of the areas where we are struggling, actually finding out on time when these grants are available. It's not very widely communicated. So I would just say, look out for all those opportunities, and try do a small proofs of concepts and values, but in the areas, don't get taken by some of the salesmen of technology. There's tons of technology available out there, but look really carefully at what is your business case and what could be a potential benefit to your organization and value, and just do a small proof of value on that and grow from there. Don't try to go big bang.
I like that. Don't trust the salesman of technology. But if again, the website of Inmarsat changed a lot over the last years, and there's one particular in maritime, there's one particular corner of it called Insights. And those are all those reports and surveys that we put there, because we believe that sharing is learning in that sense. And there's one there where you can benchmark yourself against the rest of the industry. So, because it says here SME, but there are a lot of different types of, so you can identify yourself with what you are, what ships are you operating, what type of operations do you have, and then you can see what your peers in that same section have been doing over the last years with respect to digitalization. And so you have a kind of a neutral view about what your competitors are doing and what they took first. So you don't have to jump into the deep, just take something that has proven to be successful for your peer group.
And learn from those successes and failures, that kind of thing that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. I'll quickly get this question. I wanted to get onto cybersecurity before we finish, because that was something when we spoke amongst ourselves that seemed to be quite important. But a question at the top here, as a ship operator charter, do you standardize PMS, FMS software on board the fleet, or do you have to use what's already installed or set up? That's a quick answer enough, I think.
Yeah, standardization is key to plan properly and to have bulk effects and to optimize not only purchasing but also delivery. So and for that you have to basically make things measurable and to see where you stand. We're dealing with a new kind of client as a ship manager. Most of these companies are no longer ship owners that know how to run ships. They're very often financial institutions or leasing companies and so on, and they have a completely different need for information, transparency, and just-in-time money to budget information. So in order to do that, these systems have to be completely standardized and also we have to dare to be open for them to have a real-time insight through a customer platform. I think that is important. Another thing that we feel is very important, that is a big change from what we've done before, is to bring back authority to the vessels. I still see a big disconnect where we underestimate the ability of these people to handle also complex things. Quite often we have from the shore kind of belittled what they probably can do. If provided with the right information through the systems that we give them, they are very well able to handle a lot of things. And this is why we're bringing back a lot of authorities to the vessel and building up an app store of things for them to do, including digital catalogs to choose from. So they have to be smart, they have to have certain limitations, but I can see the excitement for them to be involved, and they do it truly well.
Thank you, Peter. Himanshu, anything you want to add there? I mean,
just basically that, yes, in terms of standardizing PMS, as I said, you need to have a central master data of everything, including the job descriptions, which are specific to a particular type or sister vessels. And then after that, I just think that if anything needs to be added, it needs to be done in agreement with the ship staff and the vessel manager. Because in the end, in most likelihood, the ship staff move between ships, but the vessel manager is like more constant. So as long as both agree, then they can go ahead and certainly add for the benefit. The only other thing is that where vessel managers might falter is that they'll do this for one ship, but then they won't communicate this for all the sister vessels in the organization. So it's important to do that as well, to have that communication, and that's when you'll have a more watertight system in terms of controlling how your PMS is also being maintained agile, but yet updated across your fleet.
Okay, thank you. We have about 15 minutes left. I want to get to the cybersecurity issue because I know it's something that we've all spoken about together. Maybe Beatrice, will start with you. In terms of securing your system, I mean, as a port, it's very important to make sure that information is secure and the ability to talk to stakeholders isn't hijacked by others. in terms of securing the supply chain. It's such an important thing. What is ABP doing in terms of making sure that it's cyber resilient in the current environment?
So we work very closely with the National Cybersecurity Center, who collaborates with both regulatory bodies, with people that are looking at the national security and international security bodies. And we follow their framework for actually managing, detecting, mitigating, and actually preventing some of the cybersecurity attacks. So we run regular pen testings, and we run constant checks against not only our systems, but also we are embedding our cybersecurity program into our People Being Safe program. So we have a program in ABP called Beyond Safety, and Beyond Zero Safety, which is also not only targeting the physical security of the port, but also the cyber security of the port. And as Peter mentioned before, sometimes the cybersecurity breaches are caused by the people, and the people on board the vessels, in this case, is the people on our ports. So we are very much tackling it from the two angles. One, ensuring that digitally we are safe, but also ensuring we digitally safe from the perspective of the people, and training them how to detect those emails, those phishing attacks to actually prevent breaches in our organization.
So the people are the main cyber point
Yes.
to take care of. Peter, Himanshu, anything from the ship management side you'd mentioned on top of that?
It's a nice question you ask, Rob, because the fact is that with the latest regulations, people have written a lot about cybersecurity in their safety management systems. But some of the ships you still go on, you might find even a Windows XP computer on board, whereas we know that anything below a Windows 10 is not supported. So I think if we want to really comply with the cybersecurity aspects as ships become smarter and more connected, we ought to really look at the infrastructure side as well. So whether it means to connect data centers, servers on board for infrastructure management, or upgrading your computers, it's an investment, but it's an investment in the right direction to basically make your ships cyber secure in addition to making them smarter. I think there is an ISO standard 16425, and that ties up with what you were saying about keeping the IoT separate from the crew and the business network. And there the whole architecture is like explained as well. So it's all there. There is an ISO standard. So it's just now something for each company to look at and see how it can be done on board the ship to basically reduce the cyber vulnerabilities. People will be people, and yes, we can educate people as much as possible, but as it will be always wiser if we can make the system more idiot proof, so that at least even if people, the system also takes care in addition to people.
Thank you. Peter, anything to add there?
Totally right. We come back to training as the most important element to mitigate human error or abuse. So the trainings need to be updated and need to be done more regularly. I still think it's not there where it should be. So, but at the same time, also looking at once that, of course, the system are separated, which they have to be. We can use also the social media, or we do use the social media tools that the guys use on board to engage them better, and it works pretty well. For example, with all the cooks that we have for catering, we do recipe collection and sort out prices and engage them in many different ways, and we see a lot of excitement there. So it's good to integrate and not separate.
Sorry, just Peter, while I still have you, I think you mentioned early on with the idea of owners themselves maybe not recognizing the cyber risks, and I mean, they would know that if there's a cyber problem, it can be very expensive, but still won't take steps to invest in securing systems. I mean, is there any way out of that? Do you think that is changing over time? Is it going to improve?
I can see it's slowly moving, also speaking to cybersecurity providers. Where you see that there's a little bit of a propensity to understand that security costs money, same as like an insurance policy, right? So how quickly that will go, and where the pain point is, how much one is willing to fork out for that is still too early to say.
most of the insurance policies have a cybersecurity clause nowadays, right? So it may go pretty quick.
In terms of, Ronald, I wanted to come to you on the cyber issue, in terms of securing your networks and helping shipping companies that install your systems secure their networks as well. What kind of approach do you take?
Well, for those of you who are coming here already for a long time, you may recollect that we had an amphitheater over here on the fourth floor. Well, that is gone for many years now, and so since it's gone, we used to have a network operations center and a satellite operations center, and since then we also have a cybersecurity operations center. It's 24/7, and they have become the most powerful department in the whole of Inmarsat. So, of course, they are protecting ourselves, but they are protecting the network in that way. And it makes a lot of difference whether you buy a digital managed service from a satellite operator with such a group behind it, or whether your VSAT teleports maybe anywhere in the world on any kind of rooftop. You have to realize that we start from the satellites. They are military proof. Then we go down to the network. Then the network and the teleports that we have are operated by ourselves with all the network terrestrial in between. And then you have to realize that the digital platform that we provide to you on board of the vessel is the last endpoint of that network. It's not just a box, it is the endpoint of our network, and governed by the same rules and the same department that is governing the rest of the security. Now, the only thing that is then left over is what do you do with your onboard further on network. And I think it's the easiest way is to just take a managed UTM service as part of that same platform as a start. And then, of course, I will not start to repeat what Peter says. Training and investing in your people to do the right things, right? And separating where you can, like you say, are just good practices that you just have to follow. But an integrated managed UTM service as part of your endpoint of your digital communication platform sounds like a no-brainer to me. Yeah.
And what has been the reaction, I mean, amongst the market, amongst customers, in trying to sell that to them and convince them of the value of doing so? I mean, Peter has mentioned this issue of...
Well, the endpoint security that replicates itself, that is the easiest one. Everyone gets that. And that comes at almost no incremental cost. The UTM the managed UTM is only starting now. And I think the issue has been magnified and amplified by incidents that happened over the last year, where suddenly the world shipping industry became on the front foot of everyone's television, right? So what we see is that over the last year, not only digitalization went up dramatically because everyone saw that there's another way of working, but also the need for managed UTM came up. And that started by last summer, not this last summer, but 2020, and that only went up from that moment. So I think the pandemic did a lot of awareness for that. And I don't think there's a way back. We see that rolling out at great pace.
Thank you. As a quick final question, I might ask you guys about looking forward, emerging technologies, things like blockchain, artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, you mentioned, Peter, as well. Are there any of those in particular that are exciting to you that I think might make a big impact in the next decade in shipping operations? We only have a few minutes, so if you just wanted to point out something that you think is likely to have an impact. Peter, maybe we'll start with you and we'll go down the line.
Blockchain, probably, I can see mainly in our space with regards to crewing operations. One of the biggest challenges that we all have, we have dozens or hundreds of people in Manila or other places sitting and verifying certificates. So I think that is an area where there's really a need, where we can secure repositories with certificates for our crew members. And that will make life for them and also us as administrators much easier. So the key is to find proper problem statements for those technologies. Otherwise, it will remain to be a buzzword only without content.
Brilliant, thank you. Beatrice, any of those things of interest?
Yes, so for us, we have shown quite good results with artificial intelligence, with simulation machine learning and reinforcement learning. So that is one area that we are very keen to explore, but of course we need data. So therefore, our step number one is make sure we have clean, available data that we can exchange with everybody. And then it's really about exploiting that data with multiple techniques.
Thank you. So blockchain, artificial intelligence, Ronald, what do you think?
I will take the other one then. I sincerely believe that things like digital twins will grow dramatically. Whichever large manufacturer of systems I speak, they are working on it. Of course, all realizing that real autonomy on vessels is still quite far away, and it will, if it ever happens at a large scale, right, it will just push the pressure back to the shore to support the people on board with more meaningful actions in case things go wrong. And I think they're all working on digital twins of some sort to do just that. So that's what I will see flying.
Excellent. And the last word to you, Himanshu.
For me, it's what I see is VR and gamification for training. These two things we've seen great success. I mean, VR, it's been incredible. Cadet, we've got a huge cadet training academy back in Mumbai in India. And now cadets within the safety of their training centers are able to see what a tank looks like, what an engine room looks like, maneuver themselves around the area. This is for familiarization. And then you've got task-based VR as well, like how he was talking about LNG bunkering, or simple thing like launching a lifeboat and other such tasks. So VR, we've already seen great success where now you have a cadet joining on board with already a very good idea as to how an engine room looks like, how a navigation bridge looks like. So that from training. We see potential in AR as well, augmented reality, in terms of troubleshooting with issues that are arising on board. So let's say, for example, you want to open up a pump to troubleshoot in it, and if you've got the manufacturer or the office at the other end, you're both looking at the same thing at the same time, and then that I see great potential in as well. And lastly, I think in all honesty, AI and drones and all of that sounds very, very cool and nice, but just simple things could be looked at. For example, if you're operating the oily water separator and it's already recording a start-stop time, why could it just not integrate the position as well, requiring you not to make an entry at all in the oil record book? Or similar to that, like if all your valves that form a part of your IOPP certificate, whether it's for internal transfer of oil between tanks, whether it's about operating the oily water separator, if they've all got sensors and whatever is needed, then you could completely do away with the human making error while making an entry in a simple oil record book, where everything is recorded and port state can come and see that whether the system's been tampered or not, or used in the correct manner.